If if everyone is all set, I'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Okay, to kick things off, we'll start with the approval of the agenda. Let's see. Okay. Are there any changes to the agenda or any stated conflicts of interest? All right, it does not look like anybody has any changes, amendments, or any conflicts. So we will go ahead and dive right into our discussion items. The first one on the list is the process for the design, the process for design of the town seal. So I'll go ahead and see if, did everyone get a chance to look at the write-up for the Cheverly process? Rush, I believe you kind of put that together. So would you mind kind of talking about anything that comes to mind with that or giving us a quick walkthrough?
Sure.
Okay, thank you.
Hold on one sec. Looks like I lost my screen here. Hold on a second. Sorry, guys. Okay, so I had a chance to have a meeting earlier this week with the Cheverly mayor, Casey Monenier. And when she was on the Cheverly Town Council, she was the one who kind of spearheaded the seal redesign. The original seal, which you could see through the notes, was the central image of it was Mount Hope, which was a plantation, and that was discarded by the town council in 2020 in favor of a redesign. And I think that process took a little bit longer than what we're doing here. But in May of 2021, the town council hired a neighborhood design center to lead the community engagement design process for the new seal. The Cheverly Council appointed a town seal commission made up of residents from each of the 6 wards in Cheverly to work with NDC and their design team on the seal redesign. One thing that they tried to do was, when I was speaking with her, and I thought this was kind of brilliant, was they went through each councilmatic district and picked one older resident who was like kind of a community elder, and then they tried to pick one person who was under 18, kind of the future of the town. So you kind of had these 2 views operating. And then they also tried to include artists and marketing professionals and other people who they thought would be helpful to, continuing the conversation. The stated goals that they had as a committee were to design a town seal that reflected current town values, and a new design that could be used for the community in different scales and formats. And they wanted to make sure that the design process was community oriented and engaged with everyone. The Town Seal Commission held its first meeting in June of 2021, and the group met monthly until about March of 2022, with separate focus groups and breakout groups for young people and other key interest groups. The community had various opportunities to engage in this process. The Neighborhood Design Center did a great job, according to the mayor, of putting together a questionnaire. That was the first of a few. I have an example embedded in the link on the document of one of the questionnaires, but I think that there were a few throughout the process. When I talked to Mayor Monenier, she kind of gave me some insight on their process in addition to like kind of the broad strokes there. The first one being the Neighborhood Design Center, pretty much once they kind of got the structure of the committee in place and decided that they were going to go through with the seal redesign, they went with NDC due to their history of approaching projects as collaborations between residents and community stakeholders, design professionals, local government agencies, and fellow nonprofits, along with their staff. And she said that they were excellent to work with. She mentioned that During the Chevrolet process, the residents were very helpful and engaged throughout the entire process. They received over 450 responses to their survey, which was way bigger than the dozen max that they normally get for most community engagement efforts. So she said this was like a really big thing. She also mentioned that it was a really great community building exercise. Chevrolet is a really diverse town, just like Riverdale Park, but you do have pockets of areas where the community doesn't engage on a normal basis as much. And so this was kind of the first kind of town exercise that brought everyone together from throughout the community. She said that there was some pushback from residents who didn't want the change, but it was just a handful of vocal people. But overall, the vast majority of people loved the idea, wanted to provide feedback on the design. She also mentioned that it was helpful to the process in Chevrolet to have the descendants of the plantation, Mount Hope, and the current occupants of the house on board with the seal redesign. They kind of reached out to both descendants and the current occupants of the house, which is a private residence, a little different than Riversdale Manor or House Museum, I'm sorry. But she did get them on board, or the council got them on board with the redesign. They were part of that process going in. The committee and NDC designed the seal with a 100-year kind of lifespan in mind. They were thinking, kind of centennially in the same way that we were, or Mayor Thompson had mentioned last week, and I thought that was interesting. And they ended up choosing actually a simple design that was a homage to the recognizable Chevrolet sign on Landover Road in 202. And when I was a kid in Chevrolet, we had them on our basketball jerseys and stuff like that. So everyone knows the Chevrolet cursive font. And so that was kind of like a very popular town character. And so they kind of stuck with that. NDC conducted in-person sessions and handled multiple community surveys. They also partnered with the town on social media engagement, which I thought was really cool. And I embedded an example of one of their Instagram posts showing some other variations of the town still that they'd come up with that they did at an in-person community event at Town Park. And they had a few of these in person on top of the on top of the virtual and the digital surveys that they were putting out. And so eventually the town residents voted on the best of three options after the various work groups worked through the myriad ideas that they were working with. They narrowed it down to three, had a town vote, and they ended up picking the Chevrolet font design. And so that's kind of the broad strokes of the process. I think she said, give or take, it was around $10,000 plus or minus for the whole process, but it just depends on what level of engagement we think we'll need, and that kind of thing. And so, and that's just with Neighborhood Design Center. Again, there are other firms that do this, but they're a local firm and have a history of working with municipalities around the state and just have a good record. I think they used to have an office space over in the Pyramid Atlantic building on Route 1. So they're in our neighborhood. And I think they also have another office in Baltimore. So she couldn't sing their praises enough. Also, Mayor Menenier said that she'd be more than happy to come and talk to us as a group, answer any follow-up questions if we hit any brick walls throughout the process. She was just really excited and ecstatic about the potential of this committee to do something new and bring in a new seal and do something for the future of the town. And so she said she would be more than happy to come and discuss further or answer any follow-up questions that we might have. And I think that's all I have. Are there any questions?
Just thank you for all of this, Rush. This is awesome. It's really good to see the process laid out like this and to see the response that they got too from the community. Like that's really exciting and encouraging. It also has me planning like, okay, if we get that many, like we're going to have to structure out like how we're replying to people and how we're letting them know, like, thank you. We got it. Because that's an exciting deluge of interest that they received, and something that we, I hope that we can replicate that amount of energy and excitement.
100%. And she said that there was a point of contact who, I guess I dropped it off the notes, but I'll send it out to the group once I find it. I had my sketchbook, so I was like writing all this stuff down. But they had a primary point of contact or a project manager that was just focused on the Chevrolet Seal project throughout the process. And this person, she was available via phone, email, and was kind of like ran point, like they kind of ran point on the whole process. They were kind of coming back to the committee and to the residents to kind of get feedback and guidance, but they were kind of all hands on deck operation when it came to seeing this project through. And it seems like they kind of know like the sensitivities and how to kind of navigate bureaucratic structures and work with the community. And so it just it seemed perfect. And the person that the designated point person, the mayor loved, and they had a lot of engagement and a lot of feedback, and they were able to kind of filter some of that stuff through and knew when to kind of come back to the committee and say, hey, we need some feedback on this, or when it was like, okay, these are aesthetic things that we can tweak or make adjustments to. And so it seemed like it's kind of like an all, whatever firm we end up going with, we kind of, I think my recommendation would be to kind of get the whole package with someone who knows how to come and kind of almost like run this thing like a focus group, when you're dealing with the community and getting their feedback. And it seems like they just have a good track record of doing that. And so their point person was really good at kind of onboarding all that information and making sure that they stayed in touch with the committee.
Rush, how long was the entire process, would you say?
So that's a funny one. It was supposed to take about 5 months. It ended up being a year. I think originally they started off with a smaller group and then they expanded it to a larger group. And as you know, as the committees get bigger, the scope, everything just got bigger. And so it ended up taking about a year from start to finish. When you account for like the holidays and things like that, it was probably closer to like 8 months of actual like work. They met every month to check in as a committee, but Neighborhood Design Center, kind of kept it going. So it was about a year. And the mayor mentioned that she thought that was a lot, a lot longer than she thought it was going to be. And also she was on the town council. She was a council member when she proposed the idea, and she ended up becoming the first Black mayor of Cheverly, which was a historic feat. And so it all just kind of culminated in this longer than expected, but great community project. What's up, Richard?
There's just a question for Ms. Barnes. If we were to go to it with a firm like that, is that something that we would have to bid out, or could we? Because I know we have worked with Neighborhood Design Center before, and they're great to work with.
Yeah, I can't imagine that our process would be too much more expensive than Cheverly's. So typically, if it's over $20,000 is when we go through a formal bid process. We have worked with Neighborhood Design Center quite a bit for projects in town, and they do a great job with the community outreach. Their charrettes are just phenomenal. So yeah, I mean, I think that is like makes a lot of sense. But yes, that's the process. If it's over 20,000, we typically go through a formal process for bids. We can always just get informal quotes if you would like to do that as well. Yeah, there's a lot of flexibility.
Yeah, and to that point too, and I guess we can talk about this as we're the committee. But I don't know if it might be worth I could find out who maybe a point of contact would be, and maybe we just have an informal meeting just to kind of get a sense of what we're talking about and see what they think we might need prior to doing it, because I don't think it would take that long, to hop on a Zoom for 15-20 minutes and just talk to somebody about what we're thinking about doing and just get a sense of what the scope of work might be and what's the word I'm looking for? like a range of what it might cost. I can't imagine it would cost more than Chevrolet's though.
We should have already a contact with them, right, Ms. Barnes?
I believe so, but I'd be happy to reach out to the same person who coordinated the Cheverly process if they're still there.
Sounds
Okay.
good.
I'll forward you the contact information.
And would we want to have the firm or the point of contact established and in place before our January community conversation, or would that be kind of where we maybe reach out and bring them in as oh, this might be something that would work well, or we want that solidified beforehand so they can come in right from the beginning and help the process move forward?
I would vote for the latter. I think having, if this firm they work in community engagement. They're not just a design firm, like they're used to soliciting this kind of feedback from community groups. They might have pointers and tips and things that best practices that we as individuals can't establish or don't have to offer necessarily. So I'd say, going into that meeting, if we're able to shape and frame what we're doing and how we're collecting info through their, or whoever we end up hiring on, through an expert lens, let me put it that way, I think that would be in everyone's best interest. Projects like this do tend to have some creep in timeline, and a lot of that in my experience has happened if it's not set up properly from the start, right? So
Yeah.
I think giving us a strong foundation might help us stick to a timeline that is a little less than a year.
Yeah, so to your point, Melissa, I think that is, this is speculation at this point, but I got the sense that once Neighborhood Design Center came in, it started moving. I think it was everything leading up to that point that made this drag out a little bit. And so I agree. I think, if it's under, which we would have to do for an RFQ or RFP bid, it's probably worth just having a conversation, having them in, even on the initial structure, even if we have to change or something later. I don't know what the politics are, but yeah, that would be also my recommendation.
What's our deadline again, Ms. Barnes? I know there was for the budget, we needed to get it done by a certain time.
Right, I don't think there was a firm timeline because
Right.
we have so many things happening between now and the end of the year, but the budget is really firmed up by, I would say, March, around that time, that all the numbers are in. And I think we made this a CIP project, so there is some flexibility as far as adding more, funds to the project itself this year if needed. So I did make up a list, and I think Councilman Smith, you had asked for it before, of some areas or some places where we put the town seal. And as I started the list started to grow. And so that's one of the considerations once we get through this process. That's really the budget impact there. And we could probably do some of that incrementally.
Okay, so if this took to the summer of 2023, that wouldn't be a problem?
I don't think so. We could put it in the next budget. We could use our best guess for this year and then move forward. Councilman Lingua probably is better versed, and he's raised his hand. So I'd like to pass the mic to Councilman Lingua.
Chair Lingua from the Budget Committee.
I think he's muted.
Let's see if I can help unmute him.
We can also come back to that question. I was just curious of how much urgency we needed to move with for the question of whether we present in DC to folks at the community conversation or already have them on board. But that's a administrative question essentially, so we can keep going. Subject to the ruling of the chair, I suppose.
I would say for now, let's carry forward, and we can circle back. Unless was he able to unmute?
Yeah, I thought I had unmuted. I hit my little thing. I saw the red line go away, and I thought I was unmuted.
No, you're good. We can hear you now, so carry on.
Now we can hear me. Okay. No, we've got time. In terms of budget, we can allocate money towards it. If we spend it, we spend it. If we don't spend it, we don't spend it. By what we're seeing, what Rush has learned from the Chevrolet experience, this is probably easily going to be a process that's going to be 12 months or so to completion. And then probably some additional time after that, getting everything redone, be that from stationery to patches to uniforms, et cetera, et cetera. And Rush, I'd be interested to hear in your conversations, were there any points where you discussed, looking back on this, were you to do it over again, or would there be anything that was done differently? Or are there some things that some known unknowns or unknown unknowns, to borrow the Rumsfeld phrases, that took them by surprise, that they underestimated?
Yeah, I think
Go ahead.
I was gonna say, I think everyone was just, again, I think pleasantly shocked by how engaged everybody was, and then also like just kind of how positive people were about it. Like I said, there were people, she did say, hey, we, in the beginning, we tried to make sure we got our ducks in a row before we presented it to the broader community. But that was the main thing. I mean, in that, and, just bringing in a firm to kind of help run point instead of trying to figure out how to do it internally. I think just having it was kind of like the sooner they brought the neighborhood design center in, the sooner they were able to kind of navigate this a little bit better. So I think that was the main thing. It was just like, hey, get someone in sooner who's a professional, knows how to navigate this, and then get the conversation started as quickly as possible. Because the
Okay.
surveys and the work, the breakout sessions and that kind of thing, depending on how we structure it, can take up a lot of time. But the sooner we kind of get that structure in place, the sooner we can get through the process and have a new seal.
Yeah, and that makes sense, because this is going to be a very deliberate process, and however much time it takes is however much time it takes, because the seal is going to be around for a long time.
Yeah.
So it's really more a matter of getting it right when it gets done right, as opposed to trying to get something done by within a set time frame.
All right.
As we're seeing with them, she started this as a councilperson, she ended up including it as mayor. Okay,
That's right.
so but I do, in terms of getting a place on board, be it neighborhood design center, I think that's something we can talk with Ms. Barnes and Richard. We can talk with other staff and look at in the budgeting process about how contracts would go out. I know we have the $20,000 cap, and we have the putting out RFPs or RFQs, whichever the one it would be. So we can establish who it is, which firm we would like to work with. If Neighborhood Design Center has been doing this and they have the experiences that are going to help with us with outreach and facilitating that dialogue amongst the community, hopefully we can work with them. Hopefully, the bid comes in, if we need to put this out to bid, it comes out, they come with an attractive, bid for us to work with. So that's really about as far as my thinking's taking me at that point. But I agree, we should try and get a firm on it as soon as we can.
So in speaking to that point, it seems like the Neighborhood Design Center is a great resource, worked out very well for Cheverly. Does anybody have any alternative companies that they would want to consider at this time, or is everyone happy with kind of at this point focusing on putting the efforts towards the Neighborhood Design Center?
Yeah, I know individual designers that I would consider looking at, but I think for this project, we need a firm that's going to be able to come in and really run it and do all of the help us craft how we want to do community outreach and run focus groups and all that kind of good stuff. So I put my full support behind hiring a firm that does that, soup to nuts kind of approach.
Yeah, I agree. When I first came into this, I was thinking like, okay, we have to find a really cool designer, but I didn't think about, just the kind of holistic approach that the firm would have to take to, getting the community behind this project. And so They're the only firm that I know that kind of does all this specifically, with a track record of working with municipal leaders and municipalities to get this kind of work done. But yeah, I think whatever firm we pick would have to be like you said, was a full soup to nuts situation. And they seem to be the best game in town from what I've gathered.
Yeah, I think if we were to bid it out, it would, potentially add a couple months to the process to get a bunch of bids from people who are very unlikely to be as qualified for this work as NDC. So
Yeah.
I'm all on board.
So what would that process look like going forward from here? I don't know if you have any insight into how the bidding works, if that's something that is done kind of offline between specific people, or if that is a board endeavor. Pass on to if anybody has any insight in that.
I think that would be a procurement process, and we'd have to look into it just a little bit further. I think my only concern initially that came to mind was if this project is going to be more than $20,000, just this component of it, we can't have conversations with people on the front end. So we have to have an idea of how much it's going to cost. So maybe some outreach to the staff in Cheverly to see, how they may have done that. The bid process is really specific in how we handle that. And we have to be really careful and working with vendors if it's going to be, a full process. So I'd have to think that through a little bit.
Thank you for that insight. I think kind of from what I'm hearing is that we are going to want to have hopefully some type of rapport built with whatever agency we're using. At this point, it seems like the direction is pointing us towards Neighborhood Design Center prior to our January town crier event. Or, I'm sorry, our January community conversation event. What kind of comes to mind as far as our next focus would be maybe kind of setting a target date to have the outreach to the company and see if we can get a bid or start a report, and then maybe have a little very short meeting in between now and January to kind of discuss anything we would need to discuss in regards to moving forward with a firm, potentially that firm. Does that sound in line with what everyone is thinking, or does anyone have any other thoughts?
Yeah, that's lining up with what I'm thinking, though I did also have the question of, is January, I know January from a timing perspective, like earlier when we first discussed, seemed right for bringing the community in, but from a trying to hire and contract and get a firm on board, knowing that we would want to do an announcement in the town crier, in December for this, is that too soon? Like, do we want to hold off on submitting something to the town crier until we have a contract with a company, so that we're not, going into this January meeting if we haven't been able to contract yet, or if it does go to bids and it is a bigger thing. It just seems like there's some pieces of the process that where I'm unfamiliar with the timing internally of like how long it takes within the town of Riverdale Park to engage in those processes and go through all of the dotting I's and crossing T's that need to happen. So I'm kind of looking to Director Barnes for some guidance there.
My thought is that if this is under $20,000, we could move forward with NDC. We have experience working with them, and the biggest part with NDC is the community engagement, right? So there's a lot of different artists out there that we could certainly work with. And if we already knew what we wanted to do, and we were just
Right.
doing something like recently, we just redid the town's logo, right? So that was easy. We went to a couple of different artists and we got some prices. This is a much bigger process with the community engagement component. I am unaware of any other organization besides NDC that does this. I'm racking my brain in my 10 years with the town and my years of municipal service prior to that. I just can't think of another group. So I think we just need to determine like a ballpark cost. And it sounds like the mayor of Cheverly gave us a good idea, right? Like it was about $10,000.
Yeah, and it was pretty informal, so I don't want to, hang my hat on that, but that was the ballpark as she remembered it.
Yeah. But it's not going to be like $30,000.
No,
right?
yeah,
So,
no.
no, and I think even if we could find a firm to do this other than NDC, like they would not have just recently done it for a neighboring municipality with very similar demographics,
Yeah.
all that good stuff, and like very similar issues with their current seal and everything.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
I'm my full support is behind moving forward with them. I just, from a timing perspective, I'm wondering if we need to hold off on the town crier, like if there are processes that need to happen
Yeah.
that mean that that we would need to have a community conversation perhaps later than late January, or announce it later, just from like a next steps place. But it sounds like we're good to move forward on the path that we're already on.
And I think we do have a little bit of a benefit on our side with knowing that like 20,000 is our cap without this becoming more complex. So we could approach NDC, and of course we don't want to go right up to the line, but say, hey, we're looking for something, preferably 10, like we could maybe squeeze up to like 15. That's where we want to draw the line at. What service, what process can you provide us with that stays within that budget? And just kind of present it right off the bat within that scope. So maybe would the next step be reaching out to NDC and see if they're willing to take on this project for kind of that ballpark price? And is anybody willing to be the reach out person to them, or is there a formal channel we need to go through at this point?
Let's let staff handle that component of it. We'll reach out to Cheverly too, because I would like to connect with the folks that actually were part of that process. And then we can connect with the right person at NDC and just get an idea. The other thing with NDC is we kind of have to fit in their schedule too. They may have some other projects happening. This one's going to be pretty intense as far as with the community engagement component. I can see lots of different things that we might want to do down the road, and they have great ideas. So give it up to NDC. Let's make that contact first. I'm going to ask just our finance department just to make sure that I didn't misspeak about what we need to do. I'm pretty much 99% sure that 20,000 is the cap. So and I like the way you handled it, Jamie. So we can talk to them about that, understanding what our constraints are before we need to go out and do something different. So a fact-finding mission, I guess, is really what I need to do, sometime early next week.
Yeah, and I would also suggest in the first outreach flagging that there's a community conversation planned for late January, and that we would want their input on the structure of that. Just because, we do need to fit into their time frame, but if that is a target date that we would want them to be onboarded and having thought through, how we want to even run that conversation, I think it's important to flag it.
Yep, definitely. And we can be flexible. The only timing thing is getting something into the town crier, and with this being the December-January edition. So with regard to community conversations, we can just push it back to another date, another month if we want. But we do need to make some determinations right away, just so that we can decide how to word the article in the crier. I think still having something in there that this is coming and start thinking about it, and when get your ideas together. I don't think that would hurt to have something like that in the crier. But if we wanted a specific date, you're correct. I agree with you completely. Let's see what they have to say about that. They may say that's too soon for us, let's push it back.
Right. Would it be, I'm wondering if it's a good idea, maybe just to say that more information will be forthcoming instead of just putting a specific date for this town crier, like just letting them know that, a committee's been formed, we're looking into it, and that, basically what was already the Crown Tire piece that was as written, but maybe just taking the date off and just saying like, we'll have an update in the next crier.
Yeah, and because we did add the email into the little write-up, I think that gives a forum for people that have ideas that they're like firing on them right now. It gives them
Yep.
somewhere to go with those ideas as well. So I think, if we need to leave a date off and just say, more information coming about when we'll be having this community conversation, stay tuned. I think that's perfectly fine.
Agreed. I think Councilman Lingua has his hands up.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this article is kind of like it's the first article. It's the introductory article. It's the hi, how are you article, letting folks know. So if we're not fast and set on dates on this article, it's really not a problem, at least in my view. So we're here to, it's letting folks know there's going to be a conversation over the next several months about this, and go from there.
All right, so at this point, I know we have some reaching out to do to let the team decide how they need to approach it and reach out to NDC. Do we want to set another date for just a touch base meeting to follow up on that prior to the community conversation?
I mean, are you suggesting that we do like a smaller, like a shorter meeting in December, just to say, okay, state of the business, here's what's going on, here's what's moving and shaking, kind of a thing? Because I'm assuming that
Or I guess we could also opt to just stay in the loop via email chain as well, if that's an option too, if we don't need something as formal as everyone to hop on a chat, but it's more just to kind of have your finger on the pulse. That is another option, is just kind of keep in the loop via email.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I think if we take the date off for the community conversation and say, more information soon about community conversation, and in the meantime, Jessica kind of sees what the status is. I put the point of contact that Chevrolet used in the chat. And then we just get an update on that, then we can kind of move forward accordingly via email, and then get together if we need to, if something comes up down the road. But I have a sneaking suspicion that any information that's going to come out is going to happen after this town crier blurb comes out. So we might want to wait for our next meeting till after we see what comes into community input at Riverdale Park. But that's just my guess.
Yeah, I'd say let's stay in the loop via email as we approach the winter holiday season. And then I think that we would want to have a more formal meeting prior to the community conversation to organize around the structure and how we're running that.
Right.
And
Because they might
that was
even
the
want to
only
be,
thing.
yeah,
ahead,
because I was going to
Commissioner.
say, oh, no, I was just going to say, because I think my understanding was that the firm that we choose would probably be play a big role in that what that conversation is going to be. And so I think we want to have that in place before we do the community meeting.
Certainly. The only thing I would caution is just any decisions really can't be made via email, just trying to be as transparent as possible. So we would have to come together in this kind of a setting and give proper notice to make any sort of like formal decision. But let's see what comes out of the fact-finding mission. I'm really excited about this project. I think when I heard how much community input came through, that was wow, that is incredible.
that was
is
wild.
so incredible.
Yeah.
That's your way to Miss Barnes' heart.
It is.
Community engagement.
It certainly is. So exciting.
That all sounds very good. And it sounds like as far as the Cheverly process, Rush, you did a fantastic job gathering that information and putting it together for us. Thank you. That was very helpful. And I think at this point, we're kind of at a spot where we're all leaning in the same direction. And it seems like the next step is going to be very decided on kind of once, if we end up moving forward with NDC, once they join the team and how that looks. So at this point, I would say, is there any other thoughts or comments that we want to discuss right now about the overview of the town of Cheverly's process? Because if not, I actually accidentally skipped our first agenda meeting. I do apologize for that, Melissa, which was the review of the draft for the December-January edition for the town crier, but that worked out well since it sounds like we're discussing a few little augmentations. So I think we're going to go ahead and shift gears now and have that as a formal discussion topic. So if you wouldn't mind, Melissa, I'll have you kick us off at that point.
Sure. So has everyone had a chance to get in and read the write-up? I know I got some feedback from people, but I just want to make sure that everyone's had an opportunity to take a look.
Yes.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, great. So I made a couple, Jamie, I know you made some suggested edits. I've made those edits in there. I made a little note to myself to take the date and time out, and I might need to restructure the third paragraph a little bit, just, now that we're omitting a date from the community conversation. But did anybody not have an opportunity to make suggested edits or to talk about themes or shape or anything that was missing that they'd like to see added, but didn't have an opportunity to put that in the doc quite yet?
I still need to give it a second over,
Okay.
and I can do that this evening.
Great. Cool.
I just want to put out, like, reading it, it just made me excited. Like, I just got
Yeah, it was
whatever.
really,
Like,
really
even
well
when
done.
I go and do edits, I read it, I'm like, ooh, yes.
Yay.
Very
I'm so
much.
glad. I'm so glad.
Yeah.
I was feeling super energized and excited leaving our meeting. And I sat down. My wife was like, oh, like, what are you doing? I was like, I'm working on a thing. I'm writing a thing. I'm so excited about a thing.
That energy comes through. It really does.
Yay. Good. I'm so, so glad.
Yeah.
But yeah, so we'll just wait for some more edits to come through. Did we want to decide when to formally lock the doc? Because I know it needs to be submitted by November 15th. So making sure that, any and all suggested edits are in and we have a finalized piece by, do you want to say by, what is Monday?
The 14th?
The 14th? Do you want to say by close of business, by like 5 p.m. Monday?
Yeah.
Yes.
And it looks like Councilmember Lingua has a hand up. Please go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying yes. I was chiming in yes
Thank you.
on that deadline. That's great. Ms. Barnes, I know is quietly jumping with glee.
I'm making a note at the top of the doc as well, saying that it will be locked by 5 p.m. Eastern on 11/14.
And Ms. Barnes, do we need any official thing to go ahead with that after it's been locked, or are we good with all kind of informally giving a review of the document with the known that it will be locked and concluded at the end of Monday?
Certainly, it sounded like a consensus to me. I didn't hear any objections to that timeline. And I personally love that timeline because it's right on the deadline. So great.
Awesome.
All right, we will move forward in that direction. Fantastic. Do we have any other thoughts, comments, or concerns regarding the piece that will be submitted for the town crier? All right, it looks like we are all good. So I believe that'll bring us to our next topic, or discussion item, which is the format of the community conversations meeting in January. I imagine some of that is going to be dependent on how things progress with the NDC. So do we want to kind of brainstorm a rough idea, or do we kind of want to put a hold on that right now and see how things progress?
I'd move to put a hold on it, because I think, if they're coming in with an expert lens where they do this is part of their bread and butter, then I want us to just, rest on their expertise and, obviously give any feedback and input that we have, but let them kind of tell us what they find works best.
Is anybody against putting a hold on that? You all are making this very easy. Fantastic. Okay. So that is the end of our discussion items. Do we have anything else that has come to mind or anything else that anyone wants to bring up before we kind of wrap things up, or maybe put a tentative time frame on if we want to touch base, or if we just want to wait and see how things play out via email, and then maybe keep an eye out early January to kind of circle back?
I think what you're bringing up actually flags for me, because I don't know that we solidified this during our last meeting, and forgive me if we did and it's slipping my mind. The fact that the Cheverly team met once a month, that sounds like a good cadence to me. As far as like expectations go, knowing that December is can be a little funky because of holidays and all that kind of stuff. So I think, moving into 2023, whether we do a quick touch base or stay in touch over email, or need to jump on a short call to say, yes, we're all in consensus on making X decision in December. I think, 2023 moving forward, saying once a month, or at least once a month, I think is a solid way forward. But what are other people thinking?
Is anybody opposed to the idea of starting January 2023, having the target goal of once a month meeting?
I'm fine with that. Yes, let's,
Fantastic. It sounds like
All
we're
right.
all on the same page. I agree. I think that's a good way to kind of keep on top of it without it being overwhelming for anybody.
Yep.
Would you like to pick a day of the week, like a certain time that seems to work? Thursdays seem to be working well for this group. And if we did like the third or the second Thursday, or do you want to decide each month when the next meeting will be the next month? Totally up to you.
Oh, that's a good, yeah.
I kind of like having a decided day. That tends to work out well for me, and I'm a little more for the weekdays because it's a little more predictable than the weekends. But that's just my personal take on.
Yeah, my only hiccup is that I just haven't gotten my course load at American University yet. And so I teach, a lot of my grad classes are in the evenings. And so this semester it's been Tuesday nights have been really crazy, but it's between Wednesday and Thursday and I'm not sure yet. So I said to say I'm down to pick a date, but I might have to switch it around or ask for a change. I should know by the end of next week though. We're finalizing all that. So I don't know if that helps, but.
I generally think that's the best idea. I do wonder though, if we can have some flexibility on it for the month of December, just because anytime something has been pre-planned for a certain day in December, in my experience, it always gets moved or canceled.
Yeah, I think we were shooting for January.
Yeah,
Oh,
are
okay,
we
gotcha,
planning
gotcha,
on
sorry.
meeting in December? Or are we kind of taking December off as a holiday for all and
Okay,
then
yeah,
starting?
okay, sorry.
Yeah, I think we're targeting January. So
Yeah, I
we
think
should
we're all on the same page with you about December being a little chaotic.
Sorry, I had to step out for a second, so I
That's
must
okay.
have missed that part of the conversation.
No problem. So since we're gonna kind of see how things play out, maybe as it gets a little bit closer, maybe we can have a goal of the first week in January, reach out via email and set a date for January, maybe that first meeting isn't so much setting the pace for the rest of the year, but we can go ahead and pick a day that works out for everybody in January. And within that meeting, maybe try and look to set something a little bit more regular for the rest of the proceedings.
That
Can I-
sounds great.
Yeah, that could work. My suggestion would be that Rush, as soon as you know like what your course load's gonna look like, if
Yeah.
Thursdays at 7:30 have been working for people, then maybe suggesting that we stick with this time. If it's not working for folks and if folks have been like bending time and space to get here, disregard what I just suggested. But I think, you know, having something announced ahead of time would be helpful, because just knowing how life works for people, if we don't set it well enough in advance, all of a sudden like January is all booked up for people and we've all got stuff going on
Yeah.
at different dates and times. So I'd say sooner the better. So I'd say like Rush, as soon as you know what it looks like, maybe are we able to make a decision about meeting cadence via email? Does that have to be a meeting to make a decision?
Nope, I think we've already outlined, the time frame really, and we're just gonna get confirmation from Rush. So yeah, I think that's totally fine to make that decision via email.
Okay. Yeah, and I'm literally have a meeting next Tuesday about this, so so I'll know very soon.
Nice.
But I think Thursdays are going to be fine. I just want to confirm it so we're not shifting everything around.
No, it's helpful to know that ahead of time. Yeah, so definitely, I appreciate you giving the heads up. That makes it much easier to kind of move forward, like you said, with the right trajectory. So great. It sounds like once you get idea of what things will look like with your schedule, let us know via email, and then we can get something a little bit more firmed up for January and the preceding months. Any
Awesome.
other thoughts or concerns regarding the monthly meetings moving forward in January? Date to be determined, but hopefully Thursdays at 7:30. All
Nope.
right. This meeting is
Good.
gone quite quickly. Are we having any other thoughts or anything else that any other members want to discuss before we adjourn the meeting?
Just more of a quick thought for folks to ruminate on between now and the next time is, and again, Rush, appreciate you getting all that info from Chevrolet. I think kind of the question comes up, how much do we want to borrow from them in terms of like process?
I'm
So,
sorry,
I'm-
you cut off on the end. How much do we want to borrow from in terms of what was that last
in
bit?
terms of process, just
Yeah.
looking at their process, like we can all like review what Rush found out, read it over, look at it, and just think about it, and then when we come back, kind of, have a discussion of, how much do we want to, how much would we want to borrow from their process
Yeah, I
in
agree
terms of
with you.
that structure?
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also think, when we have conversations with the NDC, then they will probably have things that they can offer us to and likely like packages, right? Like we can offer you this kind of a package and it involves these kinds of things, or this kind of package and involves these kinds of things. So we might have some different ways of approaching it to compare. And I'm curious to hear, what all they have up their sleeves and what they have in their toolbox that we can consider.
Definitely. And then it looks like Christian Ortiz Romero has a hand up.
Yes, I just wanted to introduce myself. I'm new and I wanted to thank Director Barnes for inviting me to the meeting tonight. I'm Christian. I will be working with the town with a lot of community outreach. I just want to recognize you all for just taking the time to think about this problem for Riverdale Park's future. I really commend you all for using this opportunity to have an impact that will maybe outlive you all. So just thank you, and I look forward to working with you all.
It is
Thanks,
wonderful
Christian.
to meet you. Thank you so much.
Great to meet you.
Welcome,
Likewise,
welcome.
Christian.
We very much look forward to having you along for the process. Thank you as well for joining, because I know it is a commitment for time and energy, and we do appreciate that greatly. All right. Well, yeah, I'm so excited for this team. I think we've made some good progress. I am super jazzed that we were able to have a productive meeting, hone in on a company that I think will support what we're going for. And I look forward to the continued progression. So I think if we are all set, then we are going to conclude the meeting, and everyone keep an eye out on those emails. It looks like that's going to be our active form of communication for the next few weeks here.
Awesome. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you.
Thank you.
Take care, everyone.
All right. Good night.
Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.